I'm here with Jeff Gonzalez, candidate for the 36 Assembly District.
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez, why don't you tell us a little bit about why do you care about Imperial County?
I'm here today because if something is important to the citizens of Imperial County, then it's important to me. So my friends here have asked me to come over to this LAFCO meeting to hear about what's going on, get the ground truth. So if they're talking about it and they think it's important, then I think it's important. So that's why I'm here today.
Okay, so one of the topics that is important big time here in Imperial County is AB 918, the healthcare within the healthcare system. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts about AB 918 and the way that it was created.
When I first came to the Imperial County, the number one issue, this is not a partisan issue, but the number one issue that everyone talked to me about was AB 918 and the way in which it was formed. You see, as citizens of this community, our role is to lead and guide our community in the right direction. And unfortunately, the way this took place was the citizens weren't heard. The citizens weren't heard, and they wanted to be a part of this process. This AB 918 was rushed, and that's what's creating all of this division. So I believe that there is a possibility, there is a future solution to this, but we have to start with the people that are here, the people that are in this community, the people that are fighting for this community, and that's the everyday neighbor.
Okay, so I asked you earlier if Eduardo Garcia maybe overstepped his boundaries as far as when he created AB 918 by not hearing or considering the vote of the people.
Okay, nos vamos para allá.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so one of the one of the key pieces, and we're going to Denny's right now, so that's important. We're in the community, right? This is part of this, but
Not the one at the mall, the one over here.
this area, Imperial, is indicative of what's been going on across all of California. Legislators are creating rules for themselves, rules up top, and they're not listening to the folks here on the ground, the ones that are actually in the middle of it, the ones who are actually saying, hey, this is not going to work, this is going to work. So was this a rushed plan? Absolutely. Could it have been done differently? 100%. And how do we do things differently? The way in which we do things differently is we get the community involved. We don't just rush and impose an AB 918 just to put another check mark. We do this so that way it's best for the community. There are people here that don't have the right access to healthcare. In Calexico, they don't even have a hospital. They have equipment that's old and should be retired. These are the things that we should be looking at and talking to the community members about, instead of rushing to create legislation just to put a check mark.
Okay, so what do you have done differently?
Here's the solution, and I think it's the solution across the board. Number one, you get community input. This, when I was in the Marine Corps, that's the first thing you do. You go to the ground and you ask folks, okay, tell me what's happening, what's the ground truth? Mm-hmm. What are all the ways in which you do that? So number one is you get community input. Number two, you assemble a group of leaders, of wise counsel, to come together and say, okay, here's the problem, we need to find a solution. And through that process, with the help of the community, then you can create legislation, funding, whatever the case may be. But that's not what happened. Now, some might say, oh yes, that's what took place. If that's what took place, why are there so many issues? If that's what took place, why are there so many people that are upset? If that's what took place, why are we in this position today? That's something that you as the voter need to ask yourself, is if this was the perfect solution or the best solution, then why are we in this predicament today of a divided community? That's the question that we have to start asking.
Okay, so healthcare is one problem. Tell us two more problems in Imperial County that are important to you.
Two more problems that are important to me in Imperial County. Number one, which I hear this across the board, affordability. My son went to go he's 18, he went to go buy a dinner for us. And he said, I'm gonna cook it for you. And we thought that's a miracle. right? He's an 18-year-old cooking dinner for us. He went to go buy a pound of ground beef and a pound of ground turkey, and that cost $16, where it would normally have cost $4 or $5. How do we live in a state where we can't even afford to buy ground meat to have dinner for a couple of us, right? So affordability is one of the biggest issues that's plaguing everyone here in California, specifically here in Imperial.
So how would you mitigate that high cost problem?
Okay, so mitigating the high cost problem is we have to audit and start looking at what are the line items. And what I mean by that specifically when it comes to budgeting line items, I had a chance to look at a business who was paying for all kinds of fees to California. And when I mean, we look at gas, and gas we pay $4 and X cents. Let's call it $4.50, right? Mm-hmm. Depending on where you're going. And then a business will have to pay more than that because they have all these fees. So because of all these fees, they now have to hike up their prices. We have to reevaluate on how we're doing business with our businesses so that way they can be more affordable for community members. I get it, you have to pay your bills, but unfortunately the bills that are imposed upon our business owners are keeping us captive. And those bills that we have to pay continuously are hurting our community members. So that's the solution, is looking at all these line items, number one, and number two, cutting back. We have to cut back on what we're doing to our business owners. And the third thing that's most important to me is safety. Safety. We want safe schools. We want safe businesses, safe streets. I keep on going back to Calexico because I believe that's the front line of the Imperial County, right? That's where national and international meet. So because of that, we have tons of things going on in Calexico. And we need to get back to having a safe community, because if our community isn't safe, then how can our kids play? How can our businesses thrive? How can our grandmothers, our abuelitas, how can they go out and walk on the street if we can't get the very basics of safe communities, good education, affordability, and access to healthcare?
So this upcoming November, why should people vote for you?
I think people should vote for me because, number one, I have a life of service. 21 years in the Marine Corps, 4 combat tours. I'm a pastor. I'm a dad of a special needs son. I'm a business owner. So one of the unique things about my history is that a life of service is all I've ever known. I can't say that about others. But what I can, that are in this race, what I can say is, I'm not in this for glitz and glamour. I'm in this because my son doesn't have a voice and I'm his voice. My community isn't being heard, so I'm gonna speak up. And our businesses are hurting, so it's time for me to fight for them because people aren't doing that. So I challenge people to look at both candidates and say, who's the best option? Not because of politics, but because who's gonna fight for their community and who's gonna vote their values. And that's me, Jeff Gonzalez, candidate for the 36th Assembly District.